session, Reflections on Georgia Politics, sponsored by Young Harris College and the Institute for Continuing Learning. If anyone asks me who has more knowledge of Georgia politics than anyone ever, I would say Commissioner Pete Wheeler of the Georgia Department of Veterans Affairs. Commissioner Wheeler has worked personally with every president of the United States and every governor of Georgia since 1954.
49.
49. Sorry.
Get it right.
Sorry, I got to get it right. He has been an outstanding spokesman for the veterans of our state, and we want to compliment him for that. But we also want to ask him today to give us some of his memories on Georgia politics. So, Commissioner, I would like to begin, if you will,
Yes.
to having you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you came from, your early life, and how you got involved in veteran services and in politics.
Well, I was born in Dougherty County, Albany, Georgia. Never lived there. We moved to Oglethorpe County, Crawford, Georgia, the original Crawford. We have a stoplight there, where in Texas they only have a blinking light, and we got 12 more people in Crawford than they. It's near the University of Georgia in Athens, 14 miles, and I was raised in Crawford, Georgia, and I went to school there at Crawford High School. Was fortunate enough to be president of the senior class, and the school doesn't exist anymore. It's been consolidated into Oglethorpe County schools. And from there, I was fortunate enough to go to the University of Georgia, which is just 14 miles away. I first went to Emory at Oxford and Emory at Valdosta, which doesn't exist now. I think they closed it after I left. But,
Maybe they closed it because you left.
Probably so. But I am proud of the fact that I did go to the University of Georgia, and so many great people there at that time. Abbott Nix was the mayor of Athens and taught at the law school, and he ran for governor twice back in the old days. And Chancellor S.V. Sanford, who was the later Chancellor Sanford of the university system, lived in Athens, and Herman Talmadge was president of the University of Georgia, and Uncle Tom Reed was the registrar back then. And in 1942, Georgia had a great football team, and in January 1 of '43, we went to the Rose Bowl. Now, you may not remember this, Bob, you're not very old, not old enough to remember. The Rose Bowl was played in 1942 in Durham, North Carolina, because Duke was playing, and the Japanese had just attacked Pearl Harbor on December the 7th, '41. And by January of '42, it was played in Durham. But the University of Georgia, played in Pasadena, California, on January 1, '43. And I was fortunate enough to be there at that time. And I was in ROTC at the University of Georgia. And of course, I was studied hard there and on ROTC, and we were in the reserve, went in the reserves in Army Reserve in 1942. First went into the cavalry and fell off a horse in the parade, and then changed over to the infantry. And then I was stationed most of the time out in California, where we were training combat troops at that time, waiting for the time we went to the South Pacific. But fortunately, we dropped the atomic bomb, and a lot of us didn't have to go. But I remained in the reserves, the National Guard. Ernest Vanderbilt was Adjutant General when I went in the Guard, and he later was governor. And I went to work with the federal government as an investigator, and had between Miami and Richmond, Virginia, we were checking on the lumber people, price controls, OPA, Officer Price Controls. And when that ended, I went to Rent Controls, which I was director of Northwest Georgia at Northwest Georgia, at Rome, Georgia. And then I had a close friend that I knew. He was not in college with me, but he's practicing law, who became governor of Georgia. He was in the Navy during World War II. In fact, he was on the battleship when the Japanese surrendered, named Herman Talmadge. And I went with the state under Governor Talmadge and was there for, well, 6 years under Governor Talmadge, and then followed by 4 years under Governor Samuel Marvin Griffin, who had been Adjutant General under Governor Ellis Arnold. And then followed by Governor Vanderbilt, who was a senior when I was a freshman at the University of Georgia. I knew Annie Vanderbilt very well. We were close friends. I served 4 years under him while he was governor. And then came along an old friend of mine. I knew him when he was a freshman at the University of Georgia, Carl Sanders. And Carl was a good friend and made a good governor for the 4 years he was governor. And I might tell you that he came to the University of Georgia on a football scholarship from Richmond County down to Augusta. And he had to wait on an upperclassman named Bulldog Williams. Bulldog played tackle, and Bulldog he had to clean up Bulldog's room and bring in Coca-Colas and different things. And we used to send Carl down to get Coca-Colas for us. Of course, that embarrasses him for me to tell that now. I know he doesn't want to hear that, but he's a good friend, and I still think the world of him. And then Governor Maddox became governor, and he made a good governor, I thought. He did a great job. He did more for black people than a lot of people realize. He appointed a lot of great men who were black to important jobs while he was governor, and he should be given credit for it. And then after Governor Maddox, he became lieutenant governor, and then the governor was Jimmy Carter became governor at that time, and Carter, of course, was there 4 years and then became president of the United States. And then George Busby. George Busby came up from, actually he wasn't from Dougherty County, but he represented Dougherty County. He moved to Dougherty County to practice law and got elected to the legislature. And he was chairman of the Appropriations Committee. And then he became governor of Georgia. And George was a good governor, and he was re-elected, and so I served 4 years with Governor George Busby. And he was a great governor. And then the next governor was Joe Frank Harris. I never will forget the day I met Joe Frank Harris for the first time. He had just been elected to the House. I'm up at Bartow County, Cartersville. And Joe Frank came in the office while I was talking to the chairman of the Appropriations Committee named James H. Sloppy Floyd. Sloppy Floyd and I were close friends. Sloppy was the quartermaster adjutant, state quartermaster adjutant of the Veterans of Foreign Wars, and we had a very close working relationship. Anyway, Joe Frank came in and he says, I want you to meet this boy. Said, he's going to amount to something one day. And sure enough, he did. He became chairman of the Appropriations Committee. It's funny how that money, people decide where the money's going to move on.
They move up.
Busby was chairman, and then so was Joe Frank. And he made a good governor, too, and he was there for 8 years. And then followed by an old friend of mine who I knew when he first came down to Atlanta as a state senator from up in around Young Harris, Georgia, Zell Miller. And Zell came in as a state senator, and then he became lieutenant governor, did a great job as lieutenant governor, and also did a great job as governor of Georgia. For 8 years, I had a chance to work with Governor Zell Miller. who's a dear friend of mine at this time, and I hope we both live and maintain our friendship for 100 more years. It'd be great. And then after Governor Zell Miller, my good friend Roy Barnes was elected governor. And Roy was in the House before he was in the Senate and the House. He first went to the Senate, and then he was in the House, and then became governor. And Roy Barnes served for 4 years and did a great job. And then now, I always say this, Bob, that they asked me, say, who was the greatest governor you ever served under? He is the governor that's sitting in the chair at this time, Sonny Perdue. And I served his first term was Governor Sonny Perdue, and I'm still with him. And he's a brother, by the way. We both graduated from the University of Georgia, and Governor Perdue is a Kappa Sigma fraternity member, and so am I. And one day, the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Tony Principi, was down here visiting, and Governor Perdue walked up, and I said, Mr. Secretary, I want you to meet my brother, the governor of Georgia, Sonny Perdue. He said, I didn't know you had a brother. I said, yes, that's him right there, Kappa Sigma. So we get along fine, and he's doing a great job, and we're good friends. So whether they're Democrats or Republicans, I'm mainly interested in veterans. And I'm not a politician.
Right.
I stay out of the political. I'm not planning to ever run for anything, never did. I don't want a part-time job. I want a full-time job, helping people. And I would have gotten out of this work years ago if I'd been collecting income tax or something like that. As long as you're helping people, you enjoy it, and we help somebody every day. And a day goes by where we help a veteran or help his family get what they're entitled to. And no veteran's benefit is automatic. You got to apply for it. In order to apply for it, you got to know about it. And we try to make sure that Georgia veterans know exactly what they're entitled to. And we have offices all over the state, located in all 3 VA hospitals in Georgia. The Atlanta VA Hospital here in Atlanta, we have offices there. We have offices in the VA regional office, which is next door, and they're building a bridge between the two now. I showed you the drawing a while ago. And the Carl Vinson VA Medical Center in Dublin, Georgia, where I visited this week again. And I might tell you about how that hospital came about in Dublin, Georgia. Mr. Vinson told me this himself. He said he was chairman during World War II. Didn't have a Armed Services Committee. It was a Naval Affairs Committee. Franklin D. Roosevelt was chairman, was Secretary of the Navy at one time before he became president. He knew a lot about the Navy, both of them. So one day, Mr. Vinson went over to the White House to see the president. And he said, Mr. President, I want to build a hospital, a Navy hospital. He said, why do you want to build it, Carl? He said, I want to build it in Dublin, in my district, Dublin, Georgia. He said, well, what port is that on? He said, it's not on a port, it's in my district. He said, well, how are we going to get a battleship in there? He said, we're not. We're going to build an airport. And the airport in Dublin, Georgia was built, and the Navy built a hospital there, which is now a VA hospital. And the reason it's a VA hospital, he was smart enough to include in the law, should the U.S. Navy give this hospital up, the VA, the Veterans Administration, shall, not says may, but shall take it over and run it as a Veterans Administration hospital. At that time, they didn't want to do it because it wasn't affiliated with a medical school. But they had to do it, and thank God they did, and it's a beautiful hospital and a beautiful facility there now in Dublin. And then we have a hospital down in Augusta, and a beautiful hospital there. I think George Sankin was mayor when we were able to get that hospital there. He was a member of the Augusta National Golf Club, George Sankin was. And they were about to put it over in Columbia, South Carolina. And we had the top people in Washington come down, and Mayor Sankin was able to reserve the Augusta Masters golf course in the house. We went in Eisenhower's cabin, and by the way, Eisenhower had had bridge tables on the main floor, and he liked to paint. And he had just one little old closet room overlooking the par 3 course where he painted. And he was living he just retired as president, living in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, when we took the crowd through his house. But anyway, when we left, we had a hospital in Augusta, Georgia, rather than Columbia, South Carolina. I'm sure that had nothing to do with it, but we accepted it anyway. Strong thought he had it over there in South Carolina. So those are the hospitals. We also have a nursing home, I think one of the finest in America or entire world, in Augusta. The state of Georgia has one. We have a contract with the Medical College of Georgia to operate it for us, and they are happy to do it because it gives training to the future doctors to know what to do with older people and people who need nursing home care. And you actually get more care there in that nursing home than you get in many hospitals, because you see doctors and specialists in every category coming through there every day in this nursing home. And something else is that we are the only state, the state of Georgia is the only state in the union that doesn't charge a veteran anything. He can keep his Social Security, he can keep his retirement, he can keep his any money he might have, even his DA aid and attendance money, he can keep it all. And we get federal funds to help us maintain this facility and also keep it up to date. It's also called the Blue Goose. It's right across the street from the Medical College of Georgia. We also have a large nursing care facility and domiciliary operated by the state in Milledgeville, Georgia. And it's a beautiful facility, well kept, and the same rules apply there, and a private contractor runs that for us. And just a short distance away from this facility on the Carl Vinson Highway is located the most beautiful cemetery anywhere in the world. If you haven't been there, you should go down and look at it. We have a chapel there with stained glass windows, pointing up, giving you some direction. When you walk in there, you ought to be thinking about where you're going. Not pointing down, but pointing up, stained glass windows. There you go, you always got the name of Herman Talmadge, and we had the county unit system then. And the legislature actually decided who the governor was, and they voted in that Herman would be the governor. That's the one the Supreme Court overthrew, but he served as governor. And I remember they went down, Ellis Arnold was governor.
And wouldn't give it up.
Well, he didn't want to, but the next day they changed the locks on the governor's office, and Ellis went out in the lobby, in the rotunda rather, and had his desk out there. And M.E. Thompson had his desk in the lieutenant governor's office, and Herman was sitting down in the governor's office. But it was a strange situation. I remember Senator Jimmy Dykes from down in Cochran, Georgia, got there the next day before Ellis Arnold did. And when Ellis walked up, he said, "I'm playing governor today." And so he was sitting in his chair out in the rotunda.
Jimmy has been accused of lighting a firecracker and scaring Governor Arnold.
Well, the story goes that there's one fellow, and I won't call his name, in Governor Arnold. They call him Fearless Dan. There was a window in the office there when they went in to take the office over. And as he jumped out the window, he said, "Stand your ground, Governor, stand your ground," to Ellis. Ellis Arnold was a nice guy, and he and Talmadge became close friends after that. And
he was,
I always thought a great deal of him. He was a very nice fellow. He did some great things for Georgia
he
while
was
he
an excellent
there.
governor.
He established constitutional boards and Board of Regents, and this
What-
department, the Department of Veterans Service, is a constitutional department established during his time. So all of them have been good. We've had good people leading Georgia.
The next governor was Marvin Griffin.
That's correct. He was Adjutant General under Ellis Arnold, by the way. And he was Lieutenant Governor under Governor Talmadge. And he graduated from the Citadel, and I believe the Citadel, and he was a great fellow. We were good friends, and we made many trips together.
He had a good administration in rural roads.
That's
Yeah.
right, Face Road Roads Authority, them paving roads,
And,
did a good job.
And in education at the University and Georgia Tech.
Yes, that's right. I remember once I was with him down, I probably shouldn't say this, but we were down in Hancock County in Sparta, Georgia, and the newspapers had been just giving him hell. And they warned him about something every day. And we walked in, and there were 4 pigeons sitting over the doorway as you go into the courthouse. And I can remember he looked up at the pigeon and said, "Go ahead and do it. Everybody else is doing it."
He had a great sense of humor.
Yeah, he
Great
was a
sense of humor.
charming fellow. If you didn't want to like him, you had to stay away from him.
That's what people say. Then following him was Governor Vanderver.
Governor Vanderbilt was a great fellow. He was a senior when I was a freshman at the University of Georgia, and we became friends then. In fact, he was Herman Talmadge's co-campaign manager, Roy Harris, and Roy B. Harris from Augusta, and Vanderbilt helped manage Herman Talmadge's campaign for governor. And Annie became the adjutant general. And one day, Senator Howard Overby and Garland Baird, who later became lieutenant governor now, we had all passed the bar and were lawyers. And we went over to see Vanderbilt and wondered if we could get a flight in. We were all members of the National Guard, and wondered if we could get a National Guard flight that might go into Washington, where we'd be sworn in as members of to practice before the Supreme Court of the United States. I remember he called Governor Talmadge. This is Adjutant General Vanderbilt called him. Said, "We're planning to go to Washington and be sworn in as members to practice before the Supreme Court of the United States." And Herman told him, says, "Well, I don't have any cases pending there now. Since y'all have got cases there, you might as well go ahead and do it." They kind of got away with us. We were sworn in together at the Supreme Court of the United States. And Vanderbilt was a great fellow. I spent about an hour and a half with him when he was at Emory Hospital about a week before he died, and we reminisced about many things. We made a trip to behind the Iron Curtain together. When Eisenhower was president, they had a people-to-people thing that you could meet with the city councils of various cities. We started out at Manchester, England, and went to London, and we went to Berlin when Billy Brandt was Mayor of Berlin. Spent the night there. Kennedy had just been over there. They just put up the wall when we went away together. And then we went on into Warsaw and all over together. And he was a great friend. We reminisced about that.
You were with him, weren't you, the night that he called the group together to inform them of his decision on integrating the University of Georgia?
Yes, Vanderbilt was very fair and very honest man, and I think that's one of the most courageous and best things he can be remembered for. Many things, but that by keeping this university system open and letting all people who are qualified academically attend school regardless of race, religion, or creed, and it was a correct decision. And I don't think he's ever been given enough credit for having done that. And it was the right decision. And I think we can look back with pride the fact that we did integrate the University of Georgia, and it was a great move on his part to do it. Should have been done earlier, and it was the right decision.
And you mentioned Governor Sanders, who succeeded Vandiver and was given credit as being a New South governor.
Yes, and he was a good governor and did a great job as governor. He, I think, had Lyndon Johnson lived, I believe that his running mate, I believe that he was thinking about Carl Sanders as his running mate for vice president. He was that close with national politics at that time, and he would have made a great vice president. And he made a great governor. And he's done quite well establishing one of the great law firms in America, in the world. For that matter, he has offices all over the world. And a good man and a good friend.
Well, he tried to make a comeback after Governor Maddox was elected against Jimmy Carter in 1970, and he lost that race.
Yes, Carter painted, as I recall, painted Carl Sanders as a liberal, and painted himself as a conservative. As I recall, we were going to bring George Wallace back to Georgia. I believe that was one of the statements he made. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do. I've had the pleasure of talking to Governor Sanders. Of course, I worked with him over there since his retirement from the law firm, and
I didn't know he'd retired.
Well, he's chairman emeritus.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
He still goes there every day. Still very active. Still talks to people. But we reminisced about that race, and he was he said that Carter had claimed that Wallace was his cousin, and that he used Wallace as much as he could against him, against Sanders, in order to win that race.
Well, Sanders had did one thing that brought that on, I think. Wallace was supposed to speak at a National Guard armory down in Brunswick, Georgia, I believe, and as I recall, and he didn't think it'd be best to be having political messages delivered at a National Guard armory, and told him to speak somewhere else. And I think Carter said he was going to bring him back, implying perhaps that
Sanders wouldn't.
Yeah.
Right. Well, what people really don't know, Mr. Commissioner, is that the NAACP and the KKK had applied for parade permits, which concerned Governor Sanders very much. So he didn't want problems there. So I think that's the reason that he.
Well, Carter is a good person, and I consider him a friend, but I disagreed with him on many things while he's governor, but I still consider him a good person.
And he was an effective governor. He reorganized the government.
That's right.
But he didn't reorganize your department.
Well, not quite. We are still an independent agency, and I hope it remains that way even after I'm gone. I would hate for, I didn't think it ought to be under the welfare department, or have veterans and people on welfare sitting in the same lobby together. That was my feeling. Apparently it was a feeling of the people of Georgia.
And then we mentioned George Busby.
George Deacon Busby.
Yes.
George Busby he was a lawyer down in Albany, Georgia, Dougherty County, and he was chairman of the Appropriations Committee. And I believe he came from Vienna to start with. His family started at Vienna, Georgia, home of Walter George, who was a great senator, by the way. Walter George had a son who was killed in World War II, and he always kept his door open in Washington. You could walk in and talk to him, and he was very favorable for veterans. And the law school at Mesa University is named the Walter F. George School of Law. He came from Vienna, by the way, and had a little office there, and he'd go back and forth to Washington on the train. And he was a great fellow. Busby came originally from, I believe that's where he came from. He moved down to Albany and became a member of the House of Representatives, and was re-elected governor, served 8 years as governor and did a great job.
There was a period there when some people believed that George Busby would be speaker and,
Yes.
and forego an opportunity to run for governor, but he fooled them.
I think he did the right thing.
I'm sure he would agree with you. I'm sure he would agree with you. And then that brings up, as we reminisce here, incidentally, we're sitting in Commissioner Wheeler's office in Atlanta. But as we reminisce here, I want to ask you about Tom Murphy. What do you remember about Tom Murphy's service?
Well, I knew his brother. I knew his brother served in the House before Tom got here, and his brother was a cripple, as I recall. And I remember when Tom first came to the legislature, and I thought a lot of him. He had a big heart. He didn't want you to know it.
Yeah.
He wanted you to think he was tough, but he wasn't. He was a nice guy, a nice fellow, and he did a great job at speaking.
Well, he was very favorable to the veterans, right?
Absolutely, yes.
You know, particularly in the budget area where,
Yes, we've been very fortunate in that regard.
and you know, we might say, I think we both can agree that Speaker Murphy ruled that House with an iron hand.
Well, he did a good job.
And it wasn't all bad.
And no, it wasn't.
He did.
I wouldn't think anything bad.
No,
He did a good job.
He got criticized a lot by the press.
Well, the first speaker I knew was Roy B. Harris.
Tell us about Roy B.
Roy
Harris.
B. Harris, and then do you remember Marvin Moat?
Very
You
much.
ever heard
Boogie
of-
Moat.
Have you ever heard of Marvin
I
Moat?
have, yes.
Spotted Georgia?
I have, yes, sir.
And, we've had a lot of good speakers.
George L. Smith.
George L. Smith from Cairo or Cairo.
Well, that's George T.
George T.
George L. was from
Oh,
Swainsboro.
Swainsboro.
Yeah,
Manuel County.
A good, tough speaker.
He was a good person, George was, and
Well, tell us about,
I
tell
went
us,
to football games with him down in Jacksonville once or twice.
tell us about the period of time between the Maddox-Callaway election in 1966, when George L. Smith declared the House independent of the governor.
Well, Callaway was a good man too. I think a lot about Callaway, and he was Secretary of the Army.
Yes, he was.
And then he went out to Colorado and ran for the Senate out
He
there.
did. He was chairman of the Republican Party there.
That's right. And the current man, who is Secretary of Veterans Affairs, was national chairman of the Republican Party, and he was from Colorado, and a good friend of Bo Callaway's, and a good friend of mine. And
But that was a period before that time, the governor of the state ran the legislature.
yes, that's true.
He
I
appointed
remember the last year Talmadge was governor, the legislature didn't meet. Did you know that?
I didn't, no.
The last year he was governor, he didn't meet. He insisted that they use up their 80 days in the last year, the year before he went out. And they didn't meet the last year he was governor.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I have no idea why not.
George L. Smith was his speaker, wasn't he?
Yes, from Swainsboro,
Yeah,
yes,
right.
yes, that's right.
But we were going to talk for a minute about Roy Harris. He's a
Roy
very
Harris.
colorful historical figure in Georgia politics.
Yes, and did you realize that the first black mayor first black man elected mayor of Augusta, Georgia, had Roy Harris as his attorney for the city attorney? Did you know that?
Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
Oh, he was.
But Roy
He
was,
got along well with everybody.
yeah, he was.
He put out a little newspaper, and it had red headlines.
Right.
Something like the one Tom Watson put out at one time.
He was an arch segregationist, though, for
Well,
years.
I don't know. He had a tendency to be kind of liberal at times. He was Ellis Arnold's speaker. As
He
you
was,
recall.
that's right. And his campaign manager.
Yes, that's right. So he wasn't all conservative. He was a little,
Do you know, did you realize that Zell Miller's father once managed a campaign for Ed Rivers?
That's Uric Dickerson Rivers.
Right.
He's from Arkansas. And he lived at Lakeland, Georgia,
Right.
Lanier County.
Right.
And I remember going by to visit with him one time. Wore a bow tie, a black bow tie.
Yeah. And
Graduated from Young Harris College.
exactly. Married a professor's daughter.
And she was a teacher.
I think she was.
She
yeah.
was. E.D. Rivers. You had a lot of good, outstanding Americans graduate up at Young Harris.
Yeah, we have, yeah.
Me.
Me and
I didn't realize I was talking about you.
no,
I agree, yeah.
it's a great school. Well, I would like to get back now to veterans, if we may. Are we treating our Vietnam veterans and our Gulf War veterans properly?
Well, I don't think you can ever give a veteran too much.
Right.
And we always support anything that's going to benefit the veteran. And we certainly have a good VA hospital system that's effective now. I don't know, we need to make sure we are building onto it, and they are doing it. They're getting more positions, because we're going to have a lot of people coming back from this war that we're in now that are in worse shape than probably any war we've ever had, particularly in stress of not knowing who the enemy is and not knowing whether you're killing the right person or the wrong person, and you may be blown up any time. Every other war, you just about could tell who the enemy was. A lot of stress this time. And a lot of people are being saved today that would have died in other wars. A lot of young men are coming back with their legs off and their eyes blind and the part of the skull removed. And it's sad, but we need to remember that the care and treatment of our disabled veterans is as much total cost of war as ships, guns, and ammunition. And we need to make sure that these young men and women, and a lot of women are coming back too. We got a lot of ladies in the service today. We got to make sure that we take care of these people, and if we're going into a war, we need to make sure that we take care of the people that return home. I don't think we can do too much for these young men and women that are coming back that are disabled. I think at one point we were not doing enough, particularly down at Fort Stewart, Georgia. We learned that there were military veterans in the Army down there in barracks that were not air conditioned all summer long with no running water. That happened at Fort Stewart about 2 years ago. And when we didn't seem to worry the Army too much at that time, and I called the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Tony Principi, who's a good friend of mine, and he did something about it. He got with the Secretary of Defense, and he told him, we got space at our hospital here in Augusta. There's a new facility, and he moved all those active duty people who needed care, moved them into a beautiful place in Augusta, Georgia, where today they're taking care of people that the Marines are unable to take care of, the Coast Guard, the Air Force, and the Army, and other. They're taking care of all these young people, and when I go down there, it's sad when you go around and see a lieutenant without eyes and see a young man without legs. But at least he did something about it. And Tony Principi deserves credit for doing it. He got it straightened out and did a great job. And we still have the one and I think it's the only VA hospital in America that's doing that. It's in Augusta, Georgia. And God bless all the troops, and may they all come home safe.
Well, you've been a great commissioner. I hope you have those
Well-
additional 100 years you're looking for.
Well, we gonna have veterans for this reason. Evil is like a bacteria. It will spread. We use our military might to wipe it out temporarily, and then it breaks out somewhere else, and we have to kill the evil, the bacteria that breaks out. And there's a lot of bacteria in the world today, a lot of evil things in the world today, a lot of evil people. And I just don't understand people that would blow themselves up in order to kill somebody else.
It's not our way of
I
life.
don't understand it, and I don't think we will ever understand it. For religious reasons, I don't understand that.
So you think we're in for a long battle against terrorism?
Well, I hope that we can get the situation ironed out over in Iraq, where we can start removing troops over there in a reasonable time. And we hope that they will be able to handle it themselves. If not, we still need to get out, I think, at some point, and giving them plenty of time to get their act together. And I pray that that'll be done. I'm not pointing the finger at anybody or any political group or any political party, but I'd like to see it, and I'm sure both parties would like to see it over with as quickly as we can do it the proper way.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner.
So,
Appreciate you being our guest, and look forward to talking to you again.
well, pleasure's all mine.
Hang on, whoa. Oh, gosh.
George Deacle Busby, Doherty County, Albany, Georgia. I believe he came originally from the same town as Central Walter F. George, but Vienna, Georgia. First came up here to Atlanta as a member of the General Assembly, a great young man, and he became chairman of the House Appropriations Committee, and we became good friends. And then he became governor of Georgia he served for 8 years and did a great job as governor of Georgia. And I considered him a friend of all the people of the state. He was progressive and did the right thing at the right time. And we miss him now. George was a great fella. And it was a sad day when we went to his funeral. And I saw a lot of old friends there that grieved on losing George Busby. But we'll always remember him as a great governor, a great chairman of the House Appropriations Committee, and a great lawyer, and a great American patriot, George Deacle Busby.